Okay. Yeah, so the daily practices that I've been doing, and this is, like I say, change it up sometimes, um, but there are two. The first one is based on something that I occasionally do when I sit, which is knowing when a thought comes into my mind, knowing if it's like a visual thought or an auditory thought, um, or a kind of kinesthetic thought. That I find helpful for kind of having a bird's eye view of what goes on inside of my head without getting attached to them. The second thing I do is what we've talked about. So, well, I kind of tweaked it a little bit. So, anytime that I touch something with my hand,
Mm-hmm.
I gladden the moment and I try to come back to the here and now. So,
Excellent.
I've done it a lot. I did it before and I might try again, but right now I like this a lot that rather than a mindfulness bell, I'm doing it linked to touching things because it's kind of two birds with one stone. It makes me be aware of when I'm touching things and it also gives me a kind of excuse to come back to the here and now. And my thoughts are that because it's pleasant to do that, it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like positive reinforcement to remember, you know, basically using my hands as a trigger for that. So I'm doing those two things right now, and I found it very beneficial.
Yes, I completely agree. To start taking the focus and putting it on the hands. And the next thing that I would point to then is to stay, um, let us say, to start practicing the mindfulness of staying out of the past.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you recognize, especially the deep past, the further back in the past that the mind goes, the less useful it is, and the more subject to suffering it will be.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we want to keep the mind out of the past as much as possible. The Buddha recommends this in many, many different sutras. Um, to not dwell on the past, not think about the past. So, whenever you recognize, just like you're starting to do with your hands, do that also with the mentality about the mind. So that whenever you start to think about the past, remind yourself, oh, I don't have to be in the past. I can come back and be here right now. Because you'll find, in fact, how much of the time that we do spend on the past in the sense of, oh, dwelling on mistakes that we've made, dwelling on things that didn't go right, things that are unfinished. Let us call it unfinished business. Unfinished business is, in fact, a major source of suffering for people. More than likely, you're not going to finish that business. It was unfinished in the past for some reason. The likelihood of finishing it now is even more remote than it was then. So, staying out of unfinished business, leaving it alone, let it go, let it rot, because as we spend time thinking and dwelling in the past, it's almost like hmm, imagine that we had a pot, but it was a huge pot, and the as time goes on, the pot's bigger and bigger to the point that it's almost like a septic tank or a sludge pot or something like this. And that us thinking about the past and dwelling in the past is like going in and stirring that up, stirring up the sewer. All right, no need to do that. And as you stir it up, one of the things that happens is that things start bubbling up that stink. What's better is to leave that sewer, that cesspool alone, and eventually it will turn into fodder or manure. But if we keep stirring it up, then it won't. It will keep affecting us. Now, here's the thing that's really amazing. According to the Buddha's teaching, that there are three kinds of sankhara, which we've talked about. The bodily sankhara that has muscle memory, it has everything that's associated with the condition of the body in this moment, including all of its old past, all the DNA, all the genes, and all the learned behaviors and memories is one kind. The second kind of sankhara is what they call verbal sankhara, which has language and information in it. You could almost go so far as to think of it as thought itself, the ability to think. Because when we think in language. And the languages that we have, that we think in, were learned languages. And so this is all stuff that's been put in there. But the third kind of sankhara is the one that's the most dangerous. And that is the emotional sankhara that's built in with memories, and those memories almost always have feelings associated with them. And that the feelings that you had in the past, let us say, were unskilled, as opposed to the memories that you're creating now, are more skilled. And so you want to stay out of the old unskilled memories. Therefore, the deeper into the past we go, the less skill there will be there, and the more suffering that's likely to bring it up. So this third kind of sankhara is an emotional kind of sankhara. I've come to actually understand it in the relationship of the jhanas, that the first jhana is being able to get the mind focused so that we can stay on a particular subject, like the Eightfold Noble Path, and start watching it in the reality of the moment, that the first jhana is always going to be very this moment oriented, but the processing that we do, perception, or in modern language, we could even go so far as to call it thinking. That when the mind is thinking, then it is actually processing stuff out of one of these three methods of sankhara. Therefore, what is called the second jhana is when the mind can become very still, no thought. This no thought means that perception is no longer now dealing with the sankharas of language. So we get the mind to the state where it's like that. The third jhana then would be the ability to bring the sankharas of emotions to a complete temporary stop. Just like having a mind that's no thought, we could also bring the feelings to a state of, how to say it, a state of pleasant emptiness would be the third jhana. But in the process of dealing with the third jhana, these emotions really become quite strong. Let us say apparently strong, because we're very much deeply involved with them, so that we can see them right down to the basis as we bring it down to subsidence. And then the fourth jhana would be being able to turn off the bodily sankharas also, so that let us call it the fourth jhana would be very much like an out-of-the-body experience. People throughout the ages have noted that it feels like flying or weightlessness, or that the body is very, very big, 60 feet, 70 feet tall, that it feels like that it's way down there to the feet. You feel like that the feet are a mile away, or at least the distance of a skyscraper. So these jhana states are actually the ability of our processor, the processing ability to systematically shut things down. Coming back then to the world We're not going to be able to be in the state of shutting that stuff down, but we can, in fact, begin to see it being processed through perception. You can actually see perception in the sense of thought. You can see perception as flavoring things, so that when we see an object on the outside and we bring that into the internal world through processing, through perception, then the let us say that that processing is going to be flavored, filtered, um, infected by, or polluted with our own past. That in fact we couldn't even recognize an object without the past. But if we recognize the object and we recognize it wrongly because of our misperceptions of the past. So you can see how we cannot even operate in the present moment through perception without bringing up the past. Therefore, we want to make sure that the kind of past that we're bringing up is either going to be strictly language to do the processing and to not process it so that it brings up emotions and feelings from the past. And so basically what this means is that as we see something, we process it, we turn it into a mental image or a visualization, or perhaps uh, uh, an example of that was that you can memorize a song. That means that you're processing it, and as you're singing the song inside your own mind, or perhaps singing it out loud from memory, that is um, a way of storing data that's not visual. So when I'm talking about visual images, I'm not talking about, or when I'm talking about images, I'm not talking about strictly visual images, but rather the way that we perceive things is based upon the senses. So we're going to have internal senses just like we have external senses. And the internal senses are different than the external senses because the internal senses, number one, have been processed. Number two, have been polluted by our own past. And number three, are not what is in fact the original reality that we saw a tenth of a millisecond ago. But rather we process it and we realize it on the inside. This is very interesting, this word realize, because in fact we don't realize anything, we mentalize. And we call it realization. Now, suffering then is when the internal realization is different from what the actual reality was. Think about that. That the real suffering comes from the ability of, let us say, our mistakes and ability, or our lack of ability to actually take something that we can sense with our senses and bring it in exactly the way that it was sensed, so that we can internalize it or mentalize it, or even go so far as to say realize it, so that it's more or less the way that it was on the outside. But we don't. We internalize things through a set of old memories. So the more that you're capable of recognizing this, so that you stop processing as much as possible with the old past and leave things as much as possible here now. So what I'm suggesting then, as soon as you recognize that you're having thoughts of the past, thinking about the past, you'll also probably start feeling the same things that you felt in the past that were associated with those things. And so one of the very, very best advice that the Buddha gives is to not dwell in the past. Don't think about the past. Stay out of the past. Stay in the present moment as best you can. And you're using anchors to do that. The first anchor that you're using now is actually the anchor of the touch. That's what you were reporting, that you're using the anchor of touch. That when you start to touch something, that means to come out of the past and start being in the present moment. So now I add with that the extra doubling of it, that whenever you recognize that you're thinking about the past, then also come out of that and come to this present moment. Over and over and over again, we want to come out of the past and come into this present moment, because the past is dangerous. The past is fraught with suffering. People who think about the past are the ones who suffer the most. The people who think about the future suffer almost as much. The people who are thinking about what they're doing right now suffer the least, regardless of what it is that they're doing, because we're in this present moment. So this is something that I would point to, is that the sitting practice itself has enormous benefits and values, only up to a point. And that after you add the daily practice, then this daily sitting practice also has value to it. But if you count on only a sitting practice to do all of the work, then it's going to be a very, 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 very slow path. But if you're waking up as many times as you can, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 times a day, over and over again, as soon as you feel a breeze, you say, oh, I'll be here now. As soon as you remember that you're dwelling in the past, as soon as you feel some sort of anxiety, anything like that can be used as an anchor or a trigger to pull you into the present moment. In the beginning, I recommend for students who have never done this kind of technique to use a timer. But if you're saying that you've gotten kind of beyond the timer, that's okay. I would expect you to. I don't use a timer myself. In fact, I've never used a timer. But I can also say that at one time, Achan Po was the timer. He would just show up. And that was the time to wake up. So, you can also, one student, if you want to, he can send you the software. One student has a timer that goes off intermittently, or let us say on a random basis. So you don't know when it's going to go off.
Yeah. So I had something like that. And it was really valuable, and I might go back to it. Just for the time being, I just want to try with using the hand as a trigger, because it seems to be working really well. And I'll probably try that for another week, and if it keeps going well, then I'll probably just stick with it. Otherwise, I'll probably go back to the timer.
Okay, all right. So another thing that we can do is kind of expand that moment of mindfulness. Start thinking that when you're using the hands, instead of just being mindful of using the hands, allow this point in time to actually go so far as to be a little nibbana moment.
Yeah, that's what I do.
That you
That's what I'm doing.
stop. You can close your eyes. You can take a deep breath. You can hold that object in your hand and spin it around and really become alive and awake to it. As you see the way that I deal with my hands, that I have them just holding them like this. Sometimes the thumbs will be touching each other and rolling around for the touch. Sometimes I do them like this, but just holding the hands together. Whenever you're not using your hands. Me, I've got a marvelous lifestyle to where I've got nothing to do. And so I can hold my hands like this a lot, which means that when they break, I should know it.
Mm-hmm.
When they come apart, I should know it. So that when they do come apart, I can mindfully do whatever I was going to do with the hands. Now, because you've got a job, I don't expect you to be able to do that one as technically, um, how to say it, time consuming as this particular practice is. But the point is that you can find several little things to use as anchors to keep bringing you back into the present moment over and over and over again, and then you want to maintain that as long as you can. Make it as joyful as you can. In fact, you could even go so far as to say, every time I start using my hands, I'm going to chuckle. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to actually do something with the chest because if you're chuckling, that's actually a kind of anapanasati. You have to breathe in and then chuckle with an out breath. I don't know of anybody who can chuckle on an in breath. Though sometimes I have practiced talking with an in breath. It sounds very strange when you're breathing in. But it can be done if you work at it. But chuckling, I don't want to even try. So, anyway, what we're getting at is that we want to bring this moment to fruition, almost as if to say, giving yourself many times throughout the day an opportunity to be fully enlightened. The very best that you can have of your life, let this moment be that. Like, oh, is this a wonderful moment? This is really magnificent. I really like this moment. Okay, so we need to start working with that so that we're bringing both the frequency throughout the day as well as also the depth or intensity throughout the day rather than just merely the hands. In fact, you can do many things with the hands, just as I'm doing with my hands right now. Causes literally millions of sensations. That there is just so much happening in the hand, it's quite marvelous to experience all of the sensations that are in the hands. That in fact we live in quite a flood, but we have to experience that by being in the present moment, to really be here now. So the more often that you can remind yourself to come be here now, and then when you come to be here now, do it fully as best you can to really stop what you're doing, take that deep breath, and really get in touch with, hey, this is a really nice moment. This is really great. Over and over and over again, have a wonderful nibbana moment. That the Buddha, in fact, mentioned it very, very specifically that the first jhana, not the higher jhanas, but the first jhana, is in fact the path to enlightenment. The question is, can you get into first jhana and maintain first jhana while you're living your life with a mind that's more or less completely secluded from the past, more or less completely secluded from the future, more or less completely secluded from restlessness or worries or thoughts about other people, and can clean that stuff out of the mind and instead spend the time with the mind in actual uh, sensory input of this sensory moment, as opposed to remembering sensory moments from the past. To actually be here with this sensory moment and do it joyfully. Do it with a big giggle. Do it with a laugh. Do it with, wow, this is really great. This is wonderful stuff. This is so nice. This is what you need to start cultivating for yourself. I've been watching that. And when I ask you the question, how's your meditation? You'll say it's good, but you you say that the way that you would answer the questions to a police officer. The way that I would expect you to would do it would be uh, when I ask you how's your meditation, you would have a little Nibbana moment right then and there. Oh, it's just so good. It's wonderful. Oh, I love it. My meditation is so wonderful. That reminds me, by the way, of a joke. And the joke that I learned it in Australia. And so they used an Australian candy, which was called toffee. Do you know what a toffee is?
Yes.
Okay. So there's this guy that was really, really fat, went to many different doctors, and never could get any success with his dieting. And so finally he went to this really eccentric old German doctor. And the German said, well, you've tried everything else. I understand that. You've done this, that, and the other thing. So I'm going to give you a new way of eating. Now, instead of eating with your mouth, you're going to take all of your food anally. You're going to shove it up your ass, you're going to process it, and then you're going to poop it back out. And let's see if that does it. And so the guy was kind of reluctant, but he said, okay, doctor, we'll try it. He came back a week later and says, yes, I'm beginning to understand how to do it, and it's working. And the doctor weighed the guy, and he says, yeah, sure enough, you're losing weight. Let's do it again, okay? And so he comes back the next week, and he comes in, and he says, doctor, I'm having such a great time. This is just wonderful. I'm really, really enjoying this diet. Oh, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, doctor. And he says, well, I do see that you're losing weight, but you're a bit exuberant. Can you tell me why that is? And he says, oh, doctor, I'm having a toffee. All right, so start living your life as if you're having a toffee. Really begin to enjoy it. Start to laugh. Start to note. Start to say, "This is a wonderful moment." Note that. Note that being here now is so much better than being in the past. It's so much better than being in the future. And so you need to practice that. Or let us say you'll gain great benefit out of doing this 10, 20, 30 times a day. Start chuckling. Whenever you think about it, just say, okay, ha ha.
Mm-hmm.
Start having more and more little amount of moments. Start enjoying your life. Really enjoy it. Every time you can remember to enjoy it, really enjoy it. Have a toffee on me. And there you go. That's what I want to see. All right, laugh out loud. You can do this. Now, what I'm telling you today, I've told you before, but I want you to start to get it.
Mm-hmm.
That your meditation practice is not going to work unless you're really going to start doing it to the point that it overtakes your life. That why spend 30 minutes or an hour a day working on a let us say a skill then that you're not putting to use throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But it also makes no sense that people are going to be able to start right away in this technique. No, they need to have many, many hours on the mat. And you should continue to do the hours on the mat. But while you're doing your sitting meditation, begin to enjoy that too.
I do.
because my mind wanders away. Okay, here it comes back again, and I start to enjoy it more and more. Start to enjoy your meditation, and start to enjoy your meditation more and more often out in the world. Because we were already talking about the times, and by the way, you were talking about the tension that would come as you would leave a conversation with someone. Have you noticed anything more about that?
Yeah, it's decreased a lot. I think, like I said, one of the things I'm being mindful is of if there's any, verbal thoughts or visual thoughts or the kind of type of thought. And so what was causing me the most trouble was the kind of verbal thoughts. And so when I do that, just kind of being aware of the kind of mode of thought that seems to be good at my internal verbalization has probably gone down like 90% or something. So that's why I like that sort of awareness of that. It's for that reason. It's that it's decreasing the verbal thought without me really like trying. I'm just becoming more aware of it, and it's kind of decreasing on its own.
Yes, yes. And you're noticing that. That's the important thing is you're beginning to see that this stuff is the more you intentionally pay to staying out of the past and staying in in the present moment. The present moment is to be experienced and enjoyed, not thought about. It's the past and the future that we think about.
Yeah.
And so staying more and more in this present moment is really, really valuable. This is the moment that can be enjoyed the best. It's really hard to enjoy the past.
Yeah.
You can remember, yet it is possible. You can think of a particular good thing that happened and recognize the emotion that you had at that particular time.
Hmm.
Uh, but normally, if we just let it flow, then the mind will go off into the places where it is, let us say, at home, most comfortable, and that every one of us was born as a baby, smaller than other people, without the skills of other people. We didn't have language skills, we didn't have reading skills, we don't know anything, and so we are actually born as a victim, someone who is in a one down position. We need to be taken care of. Here's a question for you. How old do you think a child would have to be in order to survive in a jungle or a wilderness without any help at all?
13.
Right. So that means that we're spending 12 years in a shithole to where we're completely dependent upon other people. Those are hard, old memories that get deeply buried, deeply wired, and that most people actually never grow out of it. They stay dependent upon something or another their whole lives. Women will be dependent upon their mothers. Some men never move out of the house. Others of them become successful, but they're still immature. I give you Donald Trump as an example. Emotional basket cases walking around as adults. And in fact, most of the people are like that. We are emotional basket cases because we never really learn how to grow up. And basically, the growing up is another way of talking about becoming completely human. Because if we're children, almost always children are operating primarily through instinct, through the DNA, through the old programming, through the natural way of doing things. And then as we add to that over the years, over time, we still are adding the new stuff in to the old pollution, which means the new stuff that's coming in is not coming in pure, it's still coming in polluted. It's only after we learn to be here now that we can take in data that's new and raw and real and process with that rather than processing with the old stuff. An example of that would be someone used a particular word when we were young, when the situation was tense or tight. Nowadays, we're in a conversation with someone and they use that word and we take offense to it when there was no offense intended. That in fact, most of the wars happen on the planet Earth. Most of the conflicts between people, 2 people, 10 people, 100 people, and a whole nation, always is based upon misinterpretation. That one person says one thing, the next person processes that with their old garbage and comes up with something different than what was originally intended. And now they're fighting. And so this is the way that we live. So we need to stay out of the past as much as possible and to be in this present moment as much as possible. And when you get skilled at that, then that's the preferred method of living. It's much better to be in the here now than it is to be in the past. And once you recognize that, then you'll start to become dedicated, more and more dedicated to come into the present moment. Not now 10 or 15 or 20 times a day, but 300 or 400 times a day. Every 5 minutes, come back. Don't let the mind wander.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's the way to look at it, is that the more and more often that you can come and be here in this present moment, the more and more you are free from the burdens that we've been carrying around from the past. The more and more time you can spend in this moment enlightened. Because the present moment is lightweight, not heavy. Joyful. It's like having a toffee.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make sure that we've got that down, because this is an important quality of the practice. That you've said it many times, you've got a group of people who are doing it, and that this is generally the Western mentality, is that meditation is like practicing the piano. And really the way to do it is to think about it is that you want to make music all the time. Go busking instead.
Yeah.
Be out there making music all the time, not just while you're sitting alone with the piano.
Yeah. No, my daily practice has gotten a lot better as well.
You said that without a smile.
There you go.
Well, if it's getting better and getting better, it'll soon get like you're having a toffee.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Exactly. So keep doing it over and over and over again, using the timer, using your hands, remembering. This is also, we've talked about the guard, being on guard.
Mm-hmm.
Start guarding the mind to make sure that it doesn't go into the past. It's every time that you can think, every time that you recognize that the mind is thinking about the past, come back out of it and be here now.
So the thing about the past definitely resonates with me. Is it the case that everyone has a bigger problem with the past than with the future, or does it depend on the person?
Um, I would say that it's instinctual. for humans. And for that reason, everybody does it.
Mm-hmm.
And that the Buddha talks about it in many, many different suttas.
Specifically the past or the past and future?
And so it was a big issue for the people in the time of the Buddha.
But when the Buddha talks about it, is it specific the past or is it just any time but the present? Is it future or past or is it more focused on past?
Actually, um, in the various places to where he talks about it, he really nails past. He just bangs it in for a paragraph or two. And
Mm-hmm.
then he gets another nail out and he bangs that into future.
Okay.
All right, to stay out of the past and stay out of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that in fact, almost always the past and the future are connected together, neither one of which has to do with this present moment. But they are connected. And the reason that they're connected is mentally that if you run across a problem from the past, then you immediately think of this is a problem to be solved. And now you're mixing past and the future together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That we think about the past and then we'll give ourselves a job to do in the future. Now, what I'm about to talk about is a little bit advanced, but um, it's only advanced in the sense of um, generally how it's taught, but it's not advanced in the sense that um, you're it's not it's not going to be something that comes up long in the future, but it's something that's already been coming up. All right. The two things that I'm going to mention now are the two things. One is called conceit, and the other one is called restlessness. Now, conceit in the Pali term is called mana, but a more important way of looking at it is comparison. And you and I haven't talked about this. The the mana is like fetter number 8, and restlessness is fetter number 9, or asava number 9. The fetters being 10 in number, and we've already been talking about the first three. The first three would be number one, personality view. Thinking about reincarnation would be a clear example of someone who has wrong personality view. The second one is called Silabata Paramasa. The second fetter means that we are dependent upon and therefore a victim of the society that we live in, including all the rites, rules, rituals, ceremonies, and everything else. All right. The third fetter is the fetter of doubt. Doubt about what is the path and what is not the path. The doubt about um, how to live our life. Questions that arise in music, like what's it all about, Alfie? Or que sera, sera? What will the future be? Things like this, okay? These are the kinds of questions that come out of the doubt. And once we have eradicated doubt, and the eradication of the doubt comes from the full knowledge of the Eightfold Noble Path and the Four Noble Truths as being the way to go. We've come to the conclusion that there is no other way to live our lives. That the Eightfold Noble Path and the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha is superior, say, than taking Jesus as your Savior or putting a strap on a bomb and go blow a bunch of kids up in a school bus. Because some people think that they're going to get salvation that way. But we know now that none of those methods are going to work, that the right method to work is the Eightfold Noble Path, and there is no longer any doubt about it, and we become dedicated to that. This is kind of the stage that you're at. You're beginning to get really dedicated to the Dhamma. The first kind of dedication is a dedication that takes to sit down and do a sitting meditation, but now this new kind of dedication is full on. We're going to do it all the time. We're going to do it any time that we think about it. We're going to set things up so that we can be doing it even more and more often. All right. So those are the things then for the first three fetters. Fetter number 4 and 5 cannot be dealt with until we deal with the first three fetters, even though Christians know about the higher fetters, they have no skill sets to do anything about it. That's why sexual misconduct in religious organizations is so widespread. Now, not only are the Catholics getting heavily hit with it, but so are the evangelicals. So, that the fifth and the fourth fetter is ill will and lust or greed, which we basically go back down to the issue of feelings. I like it, I don't like it. I like it, I don't like it. All right? If I like it, I don't like it, feelings are there, and that they're seen ignorantly, then they will fully blow into I like her, I want her, I gotta have her, I'm going to molest her, I just molested her. All right? So that's kind of the sequence that it goes in. And that most people do not have the skills to finish those two major fetters that deal with feeling. This is why we work with Paticca Samuppada so much, is so that we can really begin to understand how these feelings operate. After we get number 4 and 5 more or less under control so that we can really start seeing what's going on, then we recognize, oh, underneath these feelings is actually another bunch of stuff. The feelings come up because of the Sankara and the stuff, but there is other stuff that's even deeper than that, down to the actual instinctual level. All right, so there's going to be an actual instinctual level that we're now going to call conceit and restlessness. But these things operate together. They both come directly out of the self-preservation instinct, and that they both create the same kind of sensations in the body that we will call anxiety. The kind of situation that you were feeling in your shoulders and chest and this kind of stuff actually is manufactured in the reptilian brain out of these two things that we're calling restlessness and conceit. But if you look at it closely, you'll see that restlessness and conceit are actually two sides of the same coin. Number one is that they create the same kind of chemicals and operate in the body in the same way. But now let's look at it from this perspective. Restlessness means I see some job that needs to be done because I feel a certain way. I feel like that I'm restless, tense, nervous, anxious, and I don't know why. So the mind then will come to trying to find something to say, oh, if I go do X, Y, and Z, then I won't feel the way that I feel. So these tensions and these anxieties that come up from a natural way that, in other words, many people will think that, oh, if I think this, then I will feel this. But in many cases, it's the other way around. Because I feel this, I will start to think this. Because I feel a certain way. Because I feel anxiety, because I feel restlessness, I will think of something that I can do that will get rid of the restlessness. The example that I use sometimes is the goat's going to get out of the pen if I don't go fix the fence. So here the guy's sitting in his hovel, and he's got a state of anxiety, and he's trying to figure out where is this anxiety? Why do I feel this? What is the job that needs to be done? And so he'll think about this, that, and the other thing, and he'll finally figure out, oh, it's the wall. I got to go fix the wall. And he goes out and he fixes the wall so that the goat can't get out. He comes back in and he sits down, and the anxiety is still there. Going out and fixing the wall didn't fix the anxiety. We have to learn to deal with the anxiety directly. Now, the next thing is the issue of conceit. Normally, conceit is the situation with people, as opposed to restlessness has to do more with things. And so you can see that there's kind of an in-between gap in there. But what we do when we have conceit means that we're comparing ourselves to other people. So if Mr. A insults you, then the thoughts will come up, something like, I'm as good as he is. How dare he insult me? He's a hypocrite. He does exactly what he's blaming me for. All right? This kind of thought that we have is self-protection. Basically what happened is that when he insulted us, we had anxiety. And now we're seeing that, oh, I know the reason for that anxiety is because he insulted me. Let me deal with him so that I can get rid of my anxiety. And you see, I can go deal with him. I can have a fight with him. I can tell him off. I can be doing all kinds of things to settle this issue of conceit or comparisons, but it doesn't get rid of the anxiety. So whether it is a person who is attacking us or a job that's left undone that's attacking us, like building the wall to keep the goat in, it winds up being the same kind of sensations or feelings in the body. The question is can we start examining these feelings directly in the body and get rid of them without having thoughts of the past or the future? Because, in fact, in both of those cases, one was the goat is going to get out, is dealing in the past of goats and walls and all of that kind of stuff, and giving myself the job of going and doing the future work of going and replacing the wall so that I won't feel bad. But exactly the same thing happens with conceit. Someone insults us, someone says something, someone refuses to do something that we want them to do, any kind of thing like that. And then that will bring up that same tension and anxiety. But now we're thinking about, even though it was not long ago, it may have been just a week ago or 2 days ago, but every time I think about that guy, I'm going to think about the insult. And every time I think about that insult, now I have to think about what can I do to right this wrong that has been done to me. So this is where the conceit comes in, trying to fix things that we perceive as broken. I got insulted. But basically what is really going on is I've got a feeling deep inside. Can I learn to deal with that feeling directly? Rather than trying to think of doing something on the outside to change the way that I feel on the inside. All right, and so this is very, very deep stuff, and it comes out of the instinct of self-preservation. If you don't fix that wall, you'll die. If you don't fix that guy who insulted you and set things straight, you'll die. Is the expression that the self-preservation instinct brings up. Everything to the self-preservation instinct is a matter of life or death. That's its only business. It's an on-off switch. It's not a rainbow. It's either black or white. It's either on or off. The self-preservation is the instinct is either feeling okay as things are now, things are safe, things are secure, things are subai, or we can think of things as dangerous. Things need to be done. So the more often you can bring yourself to a state of things are really good right now. Things are subai right now. Things are okay right now. Things are marvelous right now. Things are safe, secure. I'm satisfied. Now we're going back to the Idiyapada, the basis of power. What are the powers? The power of feeling secure, the power of feeling safe, the power of feeling satisfied, the power of feeling successful. So we need to bring those things up, but for you, you should learn to bring them up like you were having a toffee. To really feel successful. Oh, wow, this is so successful. I feel really safe. No dangers at all. I feel really secure. So these are the things that you want to start practicing. Having these, as I referenced before, little Dhammana moments to where things are really good right now. Start having those as often as you can, as many of them as you can. Use various anchors like your hands. Recognize when you're dwelling in the past that you don't have to dwell in the past. You can come back to this present moment. You keep doing that over and over again. And the next time you call, I say, how's your practice? And you'll say, I'm having a toffee.
Sounds good.
Excellent. So let's cut this off now and go back, because that's all you've got to do is keep practicing, keep practicing.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
Right.
Enjoying those little Nibbana moments. Enjoy the tune,
Yeah.
the Buddhist song. All righty. We'll see you later.
Night.
Good, right. End it with a laugh.